Make my brain melt. It's almost like you were all Dutch and I was asking you to learn 4 languages. Oh, wait, they do. So you'll be fine. Where's my magic pen? There it is. All right. Before we can go on, I need to make sure that everybody remembers how to do algebra. You don't need to write this down. Just make sure you could do it. All right? 2x plus 7 equals 11. You can all solve that, yes? Don't tell me the answer. I want it solved. I know you could do it in your head, but you could tell me right now that x equals 2. But how would you solve it? Showing me work. What would you personally do? Yes. You would move that 7 over there and have 2x equals 11 minus 7. 2x equals 4. X equals 2. Everybody's cool, yeah? Okay, how do I solve this one? X squared equals 9. I have to square root both sides, and then x will get me 3. Yeah? Except x doesn't really get me 3, does it? What does x really get me? What does this square root really get me? It really gets me positive or negative 3, doesn't it? Because negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, isn't it? Everybody remembers this, yes? We, in this class and in this section, are concerned with the positive root, which is what we call the principal. I spelt that wrong. The principal. Is it principal or principal? Oh man, I can't remember. Principal. The principal root is the positive one. Everybody cool? All right. So what then would you do to solve this one? The square root of x equals 3. Yeah. When it was squared, we took a root. So when it's a root, we must take a square. And then the square root of x squared is x. 3 squared is 9. Is everybody cool? Everybody understands? One-steppers? Yes? Now, notice this thing that I drew here that you all were able to understand. Is that not a radical with an equal sign? So is that not a radical equation? It is, right? And all of you knew how to solve it, correct? Everyone agree? Okay, let's build this one step. The square root of x plus 1 equals 4. What would you do? Because I haven't actually taught you how to do it. What would you do with that? Just knowing what you already know about math. Okay, you all said you knew how to solve this one. So what would you do? You would subtract 1 from both sides, right? So, if in every algebra question we do, our goal is to get x by itself, yes? So we have to isolate x, yes? So what part of this bothers you? The x and the radical, yes? So step 1, knowing what you already know, step 1 in radical equations is always isolate the radical. How do we isolate the radical? We use algebra. So we've got our very first question here. How would you isolate that radical? You're going to subtract 5 from both sides. And what is your new equation? Root 2x minus 1 equals 7. Is everybody cool? Yeah. I've isolated the radical, yes? Mm-hmm. All right. Step 2. What do you want to do now? Now that the radical's isolated, what becomes your algebraic goal? What is your end goal of every algebra question? Not to isolate the radical, but to isolate the variable, yes? So now we got to start working on the variable. Now, if it was 2x plus 7, we dealt with the 7 because it was far away from the x, yes? So what do you think we should get rid of there? What do you not like?
The root.
You don't like the root. So step 2 is to eliminate the root. Eliminate the radical. How do I eliminate a radical? If it's a square root, I eliminate it by squaring. What if it's a cube root?
Use cube it.
I cube it?
I think so. Or 3 over 1.
Which is it?
3 over 1.
3 over 1.
I mean, cube it.
You cube it.
Cube it.
So the cubed root of 27 cubed is what? 27, right? You know that already from our radical unit. So if it's cube root, what do you do? Cube. Everybody cool? Okay, so I'm going to eliminate this radical since it's a square root by squaring, yes? What must I remember to do? Why? Because you're right, Jazzcarm. Why do I have to square the other side? Why? What does that symbol mean? It's got to be equal. If I square this side, then it's not equal anymore, is it? So I got to square that side. So what do I get? What do I get when I square root? When I square the square root of a radicand, what do I get?
It will come out 2x minus 1.
I get the radicand, right? You all remember that from your radicals unit. The square root of 49 squared is what? 49. So the square root of 2x minus 1 squared is what? 2x minus 1 equals what? 49. So now we've eliminated the radical. But we got to remember both sides. And then what is step 3?
Minus 1.
Well, isolate the variable now, yes? Isolate the variable. Now, all of you, without actually being taught, should have been able to get to this spot, yes? So how do I isolate the variable? Add 1 to both sides. 2x equals 50. X equals 25. Is everybody cool to there? Now we have an issue. That says state the restrictions. What does the word restriction mean in English? What do I mean when I say there's a restriction on something? You guys have all, you know that restricted movies have a restriction. What is that? Pardon me? Something that stops you? Okay. Can anybody, what? A limiting condition, right? What is the restriction on an R-rated movie? 18. You can't see it till you're 18. Right? Everybody cool? So a restriction, as Heyman says, is a limiting condition. So there might be a restriction here. Yes? So let's talk about what those restrictions might be in math. A restriction, and I really like those words. I'm going to use them. I'm going to steal them from my man Heyman there, is a limiting condition. All right? So, in radical equations, the number one limiting condition is this. Can you take a square root of a negative number? Yes or no? No, of course not. The square root of a negative number doesn't exist. Right? So what does that mean we have to remember? We have to remember any radicands in the original equation must be greater than 0. Because if they're less than 0, they're negative, aren't they? And we can't have a negative. Everyone understand? So how can I put this into a mathematical expression? How do I put greater than 0 into something that is mathy? Pardon me? I can't hear you, Deepinder. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I hear what you're saying. But I need a math symbol. Greater than, right? So our radicands, all radicands must be greater than or equal to what? Are they allowed to be 0? Does 0 have a square root? Sure it does. What's 0 times 0? 0. So our radicands must all be greater than 0. Do I have a radicand here? What is the radicand in this equation? No.
Oh, 2x minus 1.
2x minus 1 is a radicand, yes? Yeah. So that radicand must be greater than or equal to 0, correct? Mm-hmm. Who remembers how to solve that from the 9th grade? Is it any different from regular algebra? No, there's just one little trick that isn't going to affect us here. So how do I solve that? What do I do with the 1? Where does it go?
+1.
Add 1 to both sides. 2x must be greater than or equal to 1. X must be greater than or equal to 1/2. Is 25 greater than or equal to 1/2? It is, isn't it? So we might be okay. That is the 4th step. Step 4, check restrictions. And we're okay, because 25 is greater than or equal to 1/2. Right? So we've checked our restrictions. Is there anywhere else we need to check? Do I know 25 is right? I do? How do I know that? I haven't checked it. Replace the x with 25. So come up to here. What is 5 plus, what is 2 times 25 minus 1? 49. What is the square root of 49? 5. Well, it's really positive and negative 7, right? Mm-hmm. But we're only looking for the positive one, aren't we? Yeah. Because we only need the principal root. Because if we didn't square this, it would always be 7. Is 5 plus 7 12? Yes, so are we okay? Yes. Is everybody cool? All right. We'll work through B together, and then I'm going to let you do C. I'm going to let you try C. So let's look at B. You can follow the steps, can't you? Okay. So what would you do to isolate that radical? Which means get it completely by itself.
Minus n.
You could take away n from both sides, yes? Mm-hmm. All right. So I don't want to actually do that yet. Well, I'm going to write it out. Minus n minus n. Now I have negative root 5 minus n equals negative 7 minus n, correct? Is that pretty? I think that's pretty ugly, actually. There's too many negatives in there, isn't there? So this is what I would recommend. This is something that you guys don't do very well because you're used to moving the thing that's not part of it, is it? But isn't that all one thing? So couldn't I move that over there? Then what would happen to that negative? If I move that over there, what do I got to do with that? Where would that negative 7 go? Well, I want the radical isolated, so can I have that negative 7 there? I can? You don't just get to say yes or no, yes and no. If I move this over here to get positive root 5 minus n, is it isolated now?
Yeah.
No, because there's a negative 7 in the way. So what do I have to do with that?
Plus 7.
Move it over here. Now I have n plus 7 equals the root of 5 minus n. Does everybody see what I did there? Does everybody see why some of you would have problems here? Because some of you will, like Ayaka did, jump right on the end. Because that's the steps I do. I isolate the radical. Is this steps to pre-calculus 11? Is that what this course was called when you chose it? No. What was it called? Pre-calculus 11. If you think a little bit, you can save yourself a lot of hassle. Everybody cool? Do not memorize a way to do something. Look at the question and do the appropriate thing. Let me give you a real life example. Let's say you had to walk from here to the mall. And you walked out on that road and you turned right on Bevan and you started walking down the sidewalk, but the sidewalk was all torn up because they were doing some work on it. Do you stop? You can't go to the mall because the sidewalk is torn up? You have to stay there till the work is done? No. What do?
Find another way.
You find another way. You look at the situation you're in and you do what's best for you right there. Right? Which would be cross the street and continue on. It's the same thing here. Do not get locked into something. These steps that I give you are a map. They are not instructions. Do you understand the difference? Everybody with me? Okay. So now, have I isolated the radical? Yes or no? Yes, in only one step. If we did what Ayaka said, we're moving the n, we're subtracting the n, we're multiplying by negative 1, we're dividing by negative 1, it's like 5 steps, right? Okay, so now I have isolated the radical. What should be my next job?
Square it. Take off of that.
Square it to get rid of it. So if I square this side, what am I going to get? 5 minus n. What do I have to do to this side then?
Square it.
Square it. Well, we just did a whole bunch of pages on that, yes? Mm-hmm. That is n squared plus 14n plus 49, correct? Everyone agree? Everyone agrees, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. What is step 3? Isolate the variable. All right. Where are their variables? I see an n right there. Is that okay? So I got n's there and I got n's there. So I better do something with them, yes? So I got too many n's. So I'm going to move that n over here, yes? What happens to him when he goes over the equal sign? He becomes positive. I've already got 14 n's, so now how many n's do I have? 15 n's, correct? I got too many numbers, don't I? So what do I got to do with that 5? I got to move it over here. What happens to that positive 5 when he moves? Negative 5. What's 49 and negative 5? Plus 44. And then I have this n squared here. Now, I left nothing over here. But it's algebra. Don't I need a number? Equals 0. Now, does that look like something with which we have worked? Sure it does. It looks like a trinomial. What is the thing that we try to do with every trinomial? Simplify it by doing what process? The process you have just been doing for the last 5 days. Factor it. If that is going to factor, I would need numbers that multiplied to 44 and added to 15. Do those numbers exist?
Yes.
What are they?
4 and 11.
4 and 11. So it is n plus 4 and n plus 11 equals 0, correct?
Yes.
Now right there, most of you now are like, okay, what next? Some of you know what to do. I need to slide over to the right here and talk for a second. Some of you know what to do here, some of you don't. If you know what to do, you don't need to write it down. If you don't know what to do, you might want to write it down, or you might just want to pay attention. What math is happening right there? Multiply. So this thing, A times B, has to equal 0, correct?
Yeah.
For two things to multiply to 0, one of them has to be what? 0. So either A has to equal 0 or B has to equal 0, correct? Well, what is A? N plus 4. So that would have to equal 0. Or what? N plus 11 would have to equal 0, correct? So n would have to be what?
0.
No. N would have to be negative 4. What would n be?
Minus 11.
Negative 11. So n has to equal either negative 4 or negative 11. Does everybody understand that? Now, we've isolated the variable. N has to be one of those two. How do we know which one it is? Is there one more step? I check my restrictions, yes? And my restrictions say that 5 minus n must be greater than or equal to 0, correct? Well, let's solve that. Negative n must be greater than or equal to negative 5, correct? N must be what? Less than or equal to what? Positive 5. Because when you divide by a negative, you flip the sign. So n has to be less than or equal to 5. Are both of those less than and equal to 5? Sure they are. They're both less than 5. They're negative. 5 is positive. So we've made it through the restrictions check, yes? So I only got to do one more check, don't I? N can be negative 4 or negative 11. Well, there's an n, right? So what should I put there? Negative 4 or negative 11. So either I'm going to use this line right here. So when I'm checking, I have n plus 7 equals the root of 5 minus n. And I can check in my head, can't I? What's negative 4 plus 7? 3. What is 5 minus 4? 9. What is the square root of 9? 3. So does negative 4 work? We're happy with negative 4. Now, do I have another one I got to check? Sure I do. I have n plus 7 equals the root of 5 minus n. But n could now be negative 11, yes? What is negative 11 plus 7? Negative 4, right? What is 5 minus minus 11? Square root of 16. Is that okay? What's the square root of 16?
4.
Positive or negative 4, correct? So this is true, but are we looking for the positive or the negative root? Am I looking for the positive or negative root? So, is this okay? No. So does negative 11 work? No. So what is the answer to this question?
Negative 4.
N equals negative 4. Is everybody cool? Lucas.
Can you make it with Bhaskara?
With,
Or no?
can you make what?
With Bhaskara.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
That's us.
So, let's do C together, then I'm going to let you try D. Is the first step in C already done? Is the radical isolated? Okay, so what would our next job be?
Get rid of the radical.
Get rid of the radical by doing what?
Square.
Squaring both sides. So p squared would equal 2 minus p. Right? Now what? Move the p and
2.
the 2. So I'm going to have p squared what?
Plus 2.
Plus p
And plus minus
minus 2 equals what?
0.
0. Right? Now, factor that. What are the factors of negative 2 that add to 1? Two only has two factors, people. Plus 2
Minus 1.
minus 1. Now, use your brains. I showed you what to actually do. What did you notice? Plus 4, our answer was negative 4. Plus 11, our answer was negative 11. If it happens once in math, how often does it happen?
Again.
Every time. So, plus 2 becomes what?
Minus 2.
P could be negative 2. Negative 1 becomes what?
Positive 1.
Positive 1. Now, what do I do with those two numbers? I have to check two things. I have to check the radicand. 2 minus p has to be greater than or equal to 0, correct? So negative p has to be greater than or equal to negative 2, right? So p has to be less than or equal to positive 2, correct? Are both of those okay? So they are fine for the restriction. That's the first check. What's the second check? Put it in. So I have two things to check there. There is negative 2 equals the square root of 2 minus minus 2. Well, can I have a negative over here?
No.
I can't because I'm looking for the positive root, aren't I? So is negative 2 okay? No. Now some of you will stop there. You won't check 1 because you'll say it has to work. Does it? You don't know that yet because I haven't taught you that. So what should you do? You should check it. 1 equals the square root of 2 minus 1. What is 2 minus 1? 1 equals the square root of 1. What is the square root of 1? Does 1 equal 1? So 1 is okay. Everybody cool? This is what we call, and I'm going to write it out and highlight it, this is what we call an extraneous root. Because it works, but only after we square this. It doesn't work in the original equation. Everybody cool? Now, your choice. Do you think you're ready to try some on your own, or do you want me to run through this one as well?
This one too.
All right. So, what are you going to do first? You're going to move that. When you move that, doesn't it become negative? So it won't be isolated anymore. So what should I move?
The negative n.
The n. So I'm going to have the square root of 6n plus 19 equals n plus 2. Now, am I okay?
Yeah.
All right, what's my next move?
Square it.
Square both sides? Okay, let's do so. What do I get on the left?
6n plus 19.
And what do I get on the right?
4 plus n squared.
No.
Oh, right.
N squared 4n
Plus 4.
plus 4. Now what should I do? You learned it in the 9th grade. You collect your like terms, yes? So what's moving, Rena? If you move that to the left, then all these are going to become negative. Shouldn't I move these to the right? Okay, so what do I get? N squared
n minus 15.
minus
2n
2n
minus 15.
minus 15. Now what should I try there?
Factoring.
Factoring. If it's going to factor, then I need numbers that multiply to negative 15 and add to negative 2. What are they?
5 and 3. Negative 5 and positive.
N
Minus 5.
minus 5,
n plus 3.
n plus 3. So what are my possibilities for n now?
n
It could be what?
positive 5 and negative 3.
Could be 5, could be negative 3. Now I have to check. What is check 1? Restrictions. The restriction says 6n plus 19 has to be greater than or equal to 0. 6n has to be greater than or equal to negative 19. N has to be greater than or equal to negative 19 over 6, which is about negative 3, yes? It's a little bit more than negative 3, isn't it? Are both of those okay? Is negative 3 greater than a little bit more than negative 3?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Yes or no? Yep. So our restrictions are cool, right? So what's next?
Put it in.
Check what? Where do we check? Anywhere I see an n, I can put it in. I think the easiest spot to put it in is right there, don't you? So what would go in for n?
5.
Let's check. Can we do it in our head? What's 6 times 5?
30.
Plus 1?
Plus 1.
Well, 6n plus 1. Or, sorry, 19. What's 30 plus 19? 49. What's the square root of 49?
7.
7. What's n is what? 5. What's 5 plus 2? Does 7 equal 7? So is 5 okay? Yep, he's good. Let's check negative 3. What's 6 times negative 3?
Negative 18.
What's negative 18 plus 19?
1.
1 equals. What's negative 3 plus 2?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Does 1 equal negative 1?
No.
Not in my universe. So is 3 okay?
No.
No. So what do we call 3? What's its proper name? Extraneous root. Everybody cool? Now, did we actually learn anything new today?
No.
You were able, almost all of you, from that, you were able to do the work, right? The only thing we've done is apply different tools to different situations. All tools you already have, right? Factoring, squaring, algebra. Yeah? All right. Why don't you try E, F, and G? Then I'll go over them, and then you can see the next thing is an assignment. I'm not giving you a lot of practice with this because there's nothing new, is there? You're just checking those restrictions. So you guys, I'm going to pause the recording on your own. Can you? Yep, this is your second trip and it's Thursday. Nice job.
マジクソやもやや最初が違うってことやもややこれ何を確認するのか分かんないあ、じゃあこれちっちゃいか。3.3333だから3じゃん。
Yep.
本当にね、マジつけなくなってイライラしまくる。
Don't know. All right. That should be enough time to have done E and F. There is E. How many people got 6? Excellent. There is F. How many people got to 2 and 3?
Me.
Excellent. How many people understand why there is no solution?
I didn't. I wasn't finished yet.
Because when you put it back into the equation, you have a square root equaling a negative number. That's not okay. And you have a square root equaling a negative number. So that's not okay. Is everybody cool? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So, do you want to have a look at this one together now? All right. So, if I were you people, I would put down my pencil and I would just watch this one. Because it's going to be recorded. You can figure it out. I would think to myself, what would I write down if I were actually doing this? All right? So your first step should be to isolate the radical. But you notice we have 2 radicals, yes? Which one do you think we should isolate? The complicated one or the easy one? You just keep saying both, Ayaka. Which one? You're going to isolate the complicated one. So how do I get rid of this times root x? I divide by root x and I divide by root x. Is everyone happy? So now I have the root of x minus 7 equals 12 over root x, yes? Now, how will I get rid of this root? I will square it. So what do I have to do to this side? Square it. So now I have x minus 7 equals, what's 12 squared? 144. Over what's root of x squared? X. And now that simple radical is gone too. Correct? Okay. Now I have to isolate x. What would you do next? How are you going to get rid of that x? Because you don't want any x's in the denominator. How do I get rid of divide by x? Multiply by what? X. What's going to happen to those x's? They're going to cancel. If I multiply the right side by x, what do I need to do to the left side? Same thing. What is x times x? X squared minus, what is x times 7? 7x equals what? 144. Solve that. Bring that over here. And now x squared minus 7x equals minus 144 equals what? 0. If we're able to solve this, what has to happen there? It will factor. So I would need numbers that multiply to 144 and add to negative 7. I'm going to save you some time. It's x plus 9 and x minus 16. So what are my possible answers here? Negative 9 and positive 16, correct? Now let's check. All my radicands have to be positive, yes? So for that radicand, x must be greater than or equal to 0, correct? And for that radicand, x minus 7 has to be greater than or equal to 0. So x has to be greater than or equal to 7. So I have x is greater than or equal to 0 and x is greater than or equal to 7. Which one of those wins? Well, no, which of these two restrictions wins? 7, because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 don't work, do they? So this is the only restriction that matters, yes? So which one of these is automatically out the window?
I mean,
Negative 9 is out the window because it's less than 7. So 16 might work, yes? But as we just found out, it's not a guarantee, is it? So what do I got to do? Check. And I check it by running it through. Square root of 16, root of 16 minus 7 equals 12. What is the square root of 16? 4. What is the root? What is 16 minus 7? What is 16 minus 7? 9 equals 12. What is the square root of 9? 4 times 3 equals 12. What is 4 times 3?
12.
Does 12 equal 12?
Yes.
In my universe, so 16 is cool and the gang. Is everybody good? Nothing new. Nothing to get scared of. Algebraic steps that you all already know. Right? Okay. Try the assignment. When do I expect this done? When? Tomorrow. It's only 5 questions. I lie. 6 questions. And you don't even have to do math for this one. But what does inspection mean? If you're going to inspect your dresser drawer, what are you doing? Searching it. Right? So, you're going to look at all those, and you're not going to do any of the work we just did. You're going to say one of those has an extraneous root. Which one? Because you should be able to tell just by looking. If you can't, it's no big deal. This I'm not too worried about. But the previous 6, I expect you to be able to do. Everybody cool? You had lots of practice, and you don't need a lot of practice because it's all stuff you already know. Right? Go. Oh, wait. By Friday, I expect pages 65 and 66 done by my pre-calculus 11 class. But none of you ever get homework.